I've made the most impact on my host institution and the people that I work with also through language. Because right now it's English acquisition is the big thing right now, especially with ASEAN coming up. About 3 or 4 months ago, a group of professors at my host institution were involved in the final leg of their master's programs, or some of them were PhD, and they had to write theses, and they have to get these theses accepted in foreign journals for graduation. So they would have me review their work, and I noticed that a lot of these papers they were writing follow a very strict template that you just don't see in international academic writing anymore มันคืออะไรที่แบบออกจะเฉมนิดนึงถ้าแบบเขียนออกมาแล้วมันแบบตามเหมือน template ทุกอย่าง so I think part of the exchange is I think I've helped my communities start to see how things are done on a wider scale, which is important now that Thailand and Southeast Asia as a whole is playing a larger part in world everything, from economics to politics.
That's great. So what are some of the ways too that the important part of an exchange and these changes, it's not only that they happen, but also that they're sustainable. So how do you see yourselves as individuals, but then also exchange programs can make sure that these exchanges are both mutual but also sustainable so they can continue to happen in the future?
Okay, take this one.
So on a more personal level, and I'm sure with my students as well, I've had experiences and memories that I will never forget, and I'm sure they will never forget. And I think in terms of some of them learning English and their improved confidence, that won't change whenever it is that I go. But I think on a more administrative level of keeping the exchanges possible, you really need a great support system, and as well as, at least for the ETA program, applicants who are willing and have experience before, I think, abroad and in foreign contexts, because it is quite challenging for your first time to live in a foreign country.
I think the Fulbright program is quite sustainable, especially now that Fulbright every year gets more competitive. And I think as long as the program continues to select the best candidates for these various positions, coming in and teaching someone English or teaching someone a new skill or giving them better confidence in what they do, I don't think that goes away. And I think that actually causes a chain reaction. So I think to some extent, the benefits of the Fulbright program are sustainable, but only in as much as the Fulbright program remains competitive and remains and selects the best candidates for the various Fulbright grants.
Okay, so one thing that Matt just mentioned that I really want to talk about a little bit is this word support system. And I know, I think, because we've talked about this before, and one of the things that really made our year such an enriching experience was really having that support system. So could we talk maybe a little bit about what that support system was for you personally, and just more concrete examples of the Fulbright support system that we had throughout this past year?
For me, it was always knowing that if there was any problem or difficulty, I could always call P-TIP or P-Key or anyone else in the Fulbright office, and they would be very eager to respond and help me out. Love them very much. And also having the other ETAs and Fulbright grantees as a way to talk about what's going on, because when you are in a foreign culture, I think everything's new and you're trying to understand a lot or trying to understand what's going on, and maybe the people back home don't understand what you're exactly going through, so in some instances they're not the best people to really help you out. So having my fellow ETAs and other grantees has really been helpful. And then also the host teachers and the other teachers at my school have been absolutely wonderful and very, very kind and always there for me.
ใช่ครับนอกจากสำหรับผมนอกจากพี่ๆที่ Fulbright นะครับซึ่งแต่ละคนก็ทุ่มเทกับพวกเรามากมายผมยังมีครูบาอาจารย์ที่ Host Institute ของผมก็คือมหาลัยนาฏศิลป์กระทรวงวัฒนธรรมผมชอบไปแคมปัสไม่มีธุระอะไรก็ชอบไปเพราะแบบรู้สึกว่าในที่นั้นจะมีความอบอุ่นแล้วแบบครูแต่ละคนก็แบบกันเองดีก็แบบไปกินข้าวด้วยกันไปทำงานด้วยกันเลิกดึกก็ไปนอนบ้านเขาได้อะไรอย่างเงี้ยก็แบบมันเป็นความสัมพันธ์ที่แบบค่อนข้างจะเหมือนparent child มากกว่าจะเป็นเหมือน professional relationship ก็นี่ก็คือแบบอะไรที่แบบผมคิดว่าแบบเป็นสิ่งที่ดีงามของสังคมไทยส่วนหนึ่งนะครับก็คือความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างศิษย์กับครูเนี่ยจะเป็นความสัมพันธ์ที่เหมือนเป็นครอบครัวซึ่งถ้าเราไปที่อเมริกานี่ก็แบบมันค่อนข้างจะเป็น professional มากกว่า
Okay, and so then we'll kind of wrap up with one last question before we open up the floor to questions. So start thinking of questions, please, Ka. Do you have any suggestions or advice to give people who are creating policy or supporting people like ourselves going through these exchanges? And what would that advice be?
For me specifically, coming here on a research grant, I found a few things. I don't want to say missing, but a few things that would have made the process of doing research easier. ผมมาเมืองไทยเพื่อทำงานวิจัยที่เกี่ยวกับวรรณคดีไทยตั้งแต่ผมมาเนี่ยผมสังเกตว่าหนังสือที่เป็นหนังสือค่อนข้างจะสำคัญของชาติไม่ได้หาได้ง่ายๆ ไม่ได้แบบหาซื้อได้ทั่วๆไปซึ่งแตกต่างกับถ้าเรียนอยู่ที่อเมริกาถ้าสมมติว่าต้องการหนังสือแบบเชคสเปียร์หนังสือที่เป็นสำคัญหนังสือที่เขาเรียกว่าวรรณคดีจะหาง่ายจะมีทั่วๆไปแต่ว่าที่เมืองไทยนี่ไม่ใช่บางทีผมต้องไปถึงหอสมุดแห่งชาติเพื่อไปเจอหนังสือที่มีอายุประมาณ 40-50 ปีแล้วเพื่อไปถ่ายเอกสารแล้วมันเป็นผมเชื่อว่ามันไม่ใช่แค่ในวิชาอักษรอย่างเดียวผมคิดว่าavailability ของ resource educational material เนี่ยค่อนข้างจะขาดแคลนใช่ไหมขาดแคลนอีกทีสิครับขาดแคลนครับค่อนข้างจะหายากครับ ที่เมืองไทยก็อันนี้ก็คืออย่างหนึ่งที่ผมอยากจะเห็นระบบการศึกษาของเมืองไทยได้พัฒนาขึ้นเพื่ออำนวยความสะดวกสำหรับคนที่มาจากต่างประเทศเพื่อมาทำงานเชิงวิชาการที่เมืองไทยครับ
I think orientations are always great and they are going to be very helpful whether it be language learning or learning about culture. For instance, maybe you can't wear one color on one day. That has been very important in Thailand. And also, it's a great opportunity for the people to get to know each other and to really connect. I think also, although maybe people would resist it, I think it's very important to have opportunities for like grantees or people participating at exchange to really have to sit down and reflect on what's going on and how they have changed. I think that's really important, although there's going to be some resistance, I think, just from young people not wanting to do that kind of work. But I think it would be very beneficial. And again, having someone or a group of people that are always there to talk to.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions for Matt or Noel? Oh, here's one. Thank you. Okay. So one of the questions we have is, what do you think of the Thai education system?
That's quite a loaded question. Okay, so about Matayom, it is, well, let's speak about the positives. So there are, coming from America, and what I was really surprised and I really loved was the teacher-student relationships that I saw forming, that in America you can't really even touch a student, not even like this. But in Thailand, it is much closer. It is much more of a parent-child relationship, and that I found has been really, really cool and really, really awesome, and something that I've really loved. Spending 30 minutes each morning going through the assemblies, that can be a bit of a drag. Gracie, you want to speak about this too?
So there, like what Matt was saying, a lot of great things in the Thai education system. I think one thing that really surprised me, and I don't know if you guys have seen it in your own schools and universities, but is very hierarchical. And I think that surprised me a lot. So it was, we had the department head, and then maybe all the ideas would come from the top down, and not as many people would listen to some of the younger teachers who had really great ideas and a new way of teaching that was really interesting. So that was one of the things that I found was a little bit kind of a challenge in the Thai system. It was just kind of navigating the whole hierarchy, even within the teachers. I don't know if you found that at your school or not.
Yeah, I think for anyone going to the United States, there are a few things that are quite different.
Yeah.
Coming to class on time, not speaking when the teacher's talking. Usually, at least in my high school, we didn't have a uniform. Kids could wear their hair however they wanted. There's no top in America, so kids don't learn with the same group of kids all the time.
I also think, and no, too, feel free to jump in. One of the things that's really great about teaching in Thailand, it was so exciting. Of course, ASEAN craze is going on. ASEAN is coming. It's coming. 2015, get ready. But it meant that there is a lot of excitement to learn English, and I think you feel that at your school. So it's just a matter of channeling all that excitement and all that energy into good teaching methods, into great, which is why exchanges can work so well, because there is all this excitement and energy to learn about other people and to share what Thainess is with other countries, and I think that's really special too, and you see that a lot in the Thai education system. You want to say something?
Well, I think one of my big concerns is about availability, like I was saying ที่ผมเพิ่งพูดถึงเมื่อกี้เกี่ยวกับ availability of text ผมสังเกตว่าส่วนใหญ่แล้วระบบการศึกษาที่เมืองไทยจะอาศัยการถ่ายเอกสารหรือคัดลอกซึ่งที่อเมริกาไม่ใช่นะครับคือเราไปเรียนมหาลัยเราจะได้ book list ต้องไปซื้อหนังสือถ้าเราโชคดีเราอาจจะเจอในห้องสมุดและการถ่ายเอกสารเนี่ยคือเขาจะรักษาสงวนลิขสิทธิ์มากกว่าที่เมืองไทยซึ่งเป็นความแตกต่างที่เกิดจากความแตกต่างในด้านเศรษฐกิจแล้วก็อะไรต่างๆแต่ว่าบางทีการอาศัยวิธีถ่ายเอกสารหรือคัดลอกจะทำให้หนังสือเดิมเนี่ยมันหายากและบางทีในการถ่ายมาหลายรอบจะทำให้หนังสือ จะมีเขาเรียกว่าอะไรนะ mistake เขาเรียกว่าอะไรนะการความบกพร่องใช่ไหมความผิดพลาดในตัวหนังสือซึ่งสำหรับผมในด้านอักษรเนี่ยเป็นอะไรที่สำคัญมากครับและหนังสือที่ผมว่าบางเล่มที่สำคัญที่ถือว่าเป็นหนังสือสำคัญของชาติเป็นหนังสือที่หาอ่านได้ยากมากครับแบบผมยกตัวอย่างว่าผมต้องการได้หนังสือโครงโลกนิตฉบับวิชาการหาแล้วหาอีกหาไม่เจอไปเจอที่หอสมุดแห่งชาติแล้วก็ไปเจอหนังสือเก่าๆอีกหลายเล่มที่หอสมุดแห่งชาติแต่ละเล่มเนี่ยมีอายุไม่น้อยกว่า40ปีและพิมพ์มาแต่ละเล่มก็พิมพ์มาไม่ใช่เพื่อการศึกษานะครับพิมพ์มาเพื่อแจกในงานศพคือผมไม่แน่ใจว่าสมัยนี้ยังทำกันหรือเปล่าแต่จากที่ผมสังเกตมาในสมัยเมื่อประมาณ50-60 ปีที่ผ่านมาถ้ามีผู้ใหญ่ตายคือจะให้แขกมางานศพแล้วกลับไปตัวเปล่าไม่ได้ต้องมีของแจกแล้วส่วนใหญ่แล้วเขาจะแจกหนังสือกันก็เลยไปขออนุญาตจากกรมศิลปากรกรมศึกษาการศึกษาเพื่อเอาหนังสือต่างๆมาลงพิมพ์แล้วผมยังนั่งคิดอยู่เลยว่าเนี่ยต้องมีคนตายเหรอ ถึงหนังสือพวกนี้ถึงจะหาอ่านได้นี่ผมพูดเป็นเรื่องตลกนะครับแต่มันก็มีส่วนที่แบบก็จริงเหมือนกันนะครับทำไมหนังสือที่ถือว่าเป็นหนังสือสำคัญของชาติทำไมมีแต่ฉบับเดียวฉบับเดิมอยู่ในหอสมุดแห่งชาติซึ่งไม่ได้ทำขึ้นมาเพื่อให้คนอ่านศึกษาแต่ว่าเพื่อแจกแขกในงานศพก็ถ้ามีใครทำงานในฝั่งนี้นะครับ publication นะครับก็ขอให้คิดถึงข้อนี้นิดนึงนะครับเพราะว่าผมก็อยากจะเห็นให้หนังสือสำคัญของชาติได้หาซื้อง่ายหาอ่านง่ายครับ
Go ahead.
Just now that students are taking their test to go to universities, one thing that is very, very challenging for Thai students is the English test. And that English test is really difficult for native speakers even. So that has been a bit frustrating to see that unless you have lived in a country that speaks English or are a native speaker, it's going to be really hard to know the correct answer. So that has been a bit frustrating.
How do you deal with that frustration as a Farang teacher?
Might been right. I don't know. I try my best and I try to help the kids with what they know and what they can do, and hopefully we improve. But to get to that level, that takes years.
So definitely kind of small steps and
Small steps.
Yeah, changes on both sides too, right? Yeah, great. And so then, Matt, another question. In recent conversations that you've had with your dad, what do you tell him now about your ETA experience? Now that it's
Okay, so I recently, or when my Fulbright when the Fulbright grant was done, I traveled to Myanmar, and I came back and I had this lesson idea where I would show the kids pictures of where I went and what I did, and then kind of transitioning into pretending to be a tour guide in Chiang Mai and asking the kids, oh, where would you take kids around, and like if I was a tourist in Chiang Mai, where would you take me? And speaking to my in what she said, speaking to my father, was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. First lesson, complete disaster. But then second lesson, when I taught it again, it worked. So even though it's been a year later, I still have there's still moments when I feel like a complete failure and feel really down, but there are also moments when I feel really good and really, really elevated, and that's ultimately why I stayed on.
That's great. All right. So then I think one other thing that we we kind of want to talk a little bit about is this idea that kind of whenever these like the idea of the cross-cultural exchanges are happening, how do you try to get people excited about exchange programs within your own communities, or encourage that, or explain to people why this has been such a great experience, both in the U.S. and then in Thailand as well?
I actually don't find that I have trouble getting people excited for it. I think everyone's excited for at the prospect of the exchange. What I think people need is sort of a guidance on how to make that exchange the most worthwhile experience possible, which is what I think goes back to what you were saying about the importance of orientations and briefings and encouraging self-reflection and assessment.
Mm-hmm. I think, too, just in talking to my students, and a lot of them don't really know what Fulbright is, and trying to explain them, like, Kon American come to Thailand, Kon Thai go to America, and then them being like, oh, I want to go. And then some of them get excited and be like, okay, so let's try and learn some English. And then when I say, oh, you're going to have to be able to speak English if you go, then some get really frustrated and get down and be like, oh, I'm never going to go. But I think overall there is an excitement for maybe not, I don't know about the kids at my school being able or having ever gone abroad or to another Western country, but there definitely is an excitement for having that possibility at our school.
And then something else that you guys were both talking about was how important you think self-reflection is. And so how do you personally self-reflect, and how do you think you can encourage other people to be self-reflective?
Well, I think teaching is itself, it demands self-reflection depending on what happens in the classroom. To be a good teacher, you're going to have to think about what you did and what you didn't do and how you related to those kids and how you presented that information. So I think just by the nature of what we were doing, it encouraged and stimulated self-reflection. And I think, though, when you do start to notice changes in yourself, in your own behavior, as you have been here for a bit longer, then that is kind of like a sign for starting to think about why you have changed and what has brought about those changes.